All right, let's jump right into a fascinating debate that's happening around one of the most perplexing topics out there, UAPs. For decades, the whole conversation has been kind of stuck, but a fresh philosophical take might just give us a completely new way to look at the whole mystery. The data on UAPs has always been so slippery, right? Always just out of reach. But what if that slipperiness, that elusiveness, isn't a bug, but a feature? What if it's the most important clue we've got? To really get this, we first have to look at the two big schools of thought that have dominated this field for years. According to researcher Bertrand Mayhust, we need to move past both of them because they might both be missing the point entirely. So on one side, you have what's called the engineer's paradigm. These folks treat UAPs like advanced enemy aircraft, focusing on their speed, their physics, the hardware. And on the other side, the skeptic's paradigm, which basically says this is all a huge misunderstanding, a collective illusion. One side says it's metal, the other says it's in our minds. This is where Mayhust throws a real curveball. He argues both sides are wrong because they see this constant elusiveness as a problem, as an obstacle to getting good data. He says, what if we've been looking at it all backwards? What if the elusiveness is the data? What if it's the actual signature of the phenomenon? So what exactly does he mean by elusiveness? And where does this pretty radical idea take us? Because this is where the argument gets really, really interesting. It suggests that the very behavior of UAPs tells us something profound about what they are. He defines it as this bizarre, almost theatrical dance. You have ostentation, this big, spectacular look-at-me display, and then you have evasion, a sudden, impossible disappearance. It's this constant game of peekaboo, showing up in a big way and then just vanishing. You see it in case after case. Now, the skeptic's view is what Mayhust calls weak elusiveness. It's weak because they see it as just a projection, like a ghost that disappears when you shine a light on it, proving it was never really there. But Mayhust is arguing for strong elusiveness, the idea that this behavior isn't proof of an illusion, but an intentional core feature of something very, very real. This brings him to a really powerful idea, the oxymoron. Like a deafening silence or living dead. It's when you combine two ideas that totally contradict each other. That's not a simple mistake. It's a sophisticated feature of complex thought. It's the kind of thing a mind does. So here's his logic, laid out pretty clearly. 1. This behavior of showing while hiding is a perfect oxymoron. 2. An oxymoron is a tool that requires intelligence, a mind. So what's the logical conclusion? The phenomenon isn't just some random natural event, it's the intentional manifestation of a psyche. And believe it or not, this isn't a new idea. Way back in 1885, the philosopher Ernest Renan basically predicted this. He said that if we ever ran into an alien intelligence, its calling card wouldn't be its technology, but its intentionality. Actions that just don't make sense by our rules, but clearly show purpose. Okay, so Mayhust has put this really elegant and provocative idea on the table. But, as you can imagine, not everyone is sold. Another philosopher, Thibaut Gress, steps in and starts asking some pretty tough but very important questions. Now, Gress has a lot of respect for Mayhust's work, but he's worried that this theory, as brilliant as it is, might actually make the study of UAPs less rigorous because it tries to explain way too much all at once. He has two main critiques. First, by lumping in things like poltergeists, the theory gets watered down and loses its focus on UAPs. Second, by using these huge philosophical concepts, the idea of elusiveness becomes so broad that you could apply it to almost anything. And if a theory explains everything, well, it doesn't really explain anything specific at all. So what's the solution? Gress doesn't just poke holes in the theory. He actually offers a constructive way forward. Instead of one giant theory, he thinks we need a new, much more precise set of tools to analyze all this strangeness. And here's his crucial point. We have to stop lumping all these weird experiences together under one vague label. It's time to start using a sharper, more defined vocabulary so we can understand exactly what kind of oddity we're talking about in each report. This table is pretty cool. It shows how Gress builds a better framework by going back to the roots of the words themselves. Normal from norma, a rule, anomaly from nomos, a law, and anomalous from homolos, meaning the same. Each word points to a different kind of weird, a different kind of break from a different baseline. And this is where it gets really powerful. Griss's new lexicon helps us draw a sharp line between something that's just highly unusual and something that feels genuinely impossible. For instance, imagine seeing a humanoid creature. That would be absolutely shocking, right? It violates your empirical norm, everything your past experience tells you to expect. But it doesn't fundamentally break the laws of biology or physics. It's just extremely, extremely rare. But what about seeing a solid physical object just wink out of existence? That's a totally different ballgame. That seems to violate a structural norm of reality itself, our core understanding that objects have permanence. That doesn't just feel rare, it feels impossible. Gress uses the perfect analogy here, a magic show. A great magic trick isn't impressive just because it's clever, it's impressive because it's designed to look like it's breaking the structural rules of the universe, making someone levitate or vanish into thin air. So this whole intellectual journey, from Mayhust's big theory about elusiveness to Gress's super precise lexicon, doesn't really hand us a simple answer. What it does, though, is give us a much more sophisticated way to even approach the topic of UAPs. Gress's framework essentially gives us 3 different levels of strangeness. Level 1, it's just a deviation from the familiar. Level 2, it's a violation of our expectations. And level 3, it's an event that seems to flat out contradict the laws of nature. Thinking in these layers lets us analyze testimony with so much more precision. And why does any of this matter? Because it shifts our focus. We move away from this hunt for a single grand theory of everything for UAPs, and we move toward carefully understanding the specific nature of the strangeness being reported. It's all about asking better questions. And in the end, this whole debate leaves us with a really deep question to chew on. When a witness reports something that seems to break the structural rules of reality, something that seems impossible, are we just seeing the limits of human perception? Or are we getting a glimpse of a feature of reality that we just haven't figured out yet?